Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973.
9 minutes before 8, we'll come back to our discussion about the horrific events in the English Channel on Wednesday night in November. But the other big story, and as we went through the newspapers, of course, we reflected that, is, as 3 front pages say, 6 countries on the red list. COVID variant poses, quote, significant threat. Let's get all the background on that now from Conservative MP and Secretary of State for Transport Grant Shapps, who joins me now. How significant is the threat, and why has the decision been taken to put these countries on the red list? Good morning to you.
Morning, Nick. Jenny Harries, who's the Chief Executive of the UK Health Security Agency, described it as the most significant variant that we've encountered. So clearly not one that we could ignore. Concerns about its transmissibility, concerns about whether it might be able to evade the vaccine. So very early action. We acted literally within an hour or so of the information being given to us by the Health Protection.
Noting you're not a professor of virology, but when or how will we know whether the jabs that we are all had, and if you haven't had one, get down this afternoon, or wherever you need to go, get there this weekend. How will we know if they're effective, Secretary of State?
Yeah, so I think the process is, as you say, I'm not an expert, but we've all become armchair experts on this. The process is you have to grow a culture. That is a matter of weeks to do, and then you have to test it against the vaccinations that we have available to find out how effective they'll be. So it's a matter of weeks, and just for information, our first review of this will be in 3 weeks' time, which may or may not have been long enough to have done that work. So I should say, actually, the South Africans have been brilliant with this. They've got good genome sequencing ability. They've been completely transparent and uploaded this information. So I want to pay tribute to them for the way that they've approached it. We think safety first is the only way to go. We've been down this route many times before. This is more like as we acted, for example, with the mink variant from Denmark, where we acted very quickly and were able to ease things off afterwards once we knew exactly how it would interact with the vaccines.
Well, just picking up on that, and again, you mentioned the pace at which you've moved. I have to take you back earlier this year when the Prime Minister and Matt Hancock, I'm sure you remember him, were criticised. It took 22 days to ban the travel from India after the Indian variant, and now just 1 day. Why so swiftly now? And looking back at India, that was a terrible mistake, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I suppose you could say that previously we've worked to the time scale of the World Health Organization. Although you mentioned about the amount of time from first report to acting with the Indian, what became the Delta variant. It's fair to say that the World Health Organization had not, at that time, made it a variant, I think, either under investigation or even of concern at that time. So we actually acted ahead of that. But, I mean, it's a fool who doesn't learn from what's happened in the past. We know 2 things. One, that acting early is important, but 2, in fairness, that you can't stop this regardless. Every country has ended up with a Delta variant, so we're not pretending that this protects us from that variant coming here, though we haven't detected any cases yet. What we do know is the more time we give ourselves to test it and to grow the culture and to check its veracity, the more time we give ourselves, the better. And so this is a safety-first, precautionary approach. And I think, given all the history of coronavirus, it's the right one to take.
6 countries then added to this red list. How likely is it that other countries might follow? And if it's the case, will there be weekly announcements or on the day? How would you handle that, Secretary of State?
Well, again, we don't want to, I really, of course, don't want to go back to the bad old days. And we do have this wall of vaccination. And as you said in your intro, please get your booster jab if you're due. You can book it from 5 months onwards after your second jab, and take it from 6 months. Nearly 30% of people have already had that booster jab. We're again, as we saw before, because we've got the booster program who's running early, we've got the vaccination program running early. We're doing well on that. That is our main defence. So we're in a very different place from before. But we do need to make sure that we're checking out any significant variants of concern, and this one is the most significant that we've encountered to date. So important to take this action.
Now, an equally important story is, of course, the horror that played out in the English Channel on Wednesday night. You may or you might not be aware that Priti Patel's counterpart in France, Gérald Darmanin, has actually cancelled talks with the British Home Secretary blaming the letter sent by the Prime Minister, quotes, making it public made it even worse. These are some of the suggestions in Boris Johnson's 5-point plan. Your response on that, and do you think the Prime Minister perhaps that was a misstep? Grant Shapps?
No, I don't. I think neither nation, France or the UK, can tackle this alone. So I very much hope the French will reconsider. Talking is obviously the way forward. The Prime Minister's made a series of 5 different proposals, and they're made in good faith. It's all about joint working. It's all about cooperation. So, I sincerely hope that we can work hand in glove.
Do you think it was an inflammatory gesture by Boris Johnson to send that letter out last night?
Well, I don't think so. I just read the letter. It proposes a joint or reciprocal maritime patrol in each other's waters so that we can help to tackle this. And I have to say, we work hand in glove with the French elsewhere. Right now, we do so militarily with them in North Africa, assisting the French on their own operations there. And that's the sort of history that we have with each other. I think it's important that we do work together because the scenes in the Channel are absolutely tragic, and it's incumbent on us all to do everything we possibly can to stop these criminal gangs from operating there. You can't do that without talking.
I'm talking to you from London, where I'm sure, again, you're aware with your transport brief, a number of tube lines are not in operation on what is said to be one of the busiest days of the year, certainly of the shopping year, due to industrial action. Secretary of State, a view on that?
Yes, look, I actually absolutely appeal to the unions to not disrupt everyone's life. We've had enough of this disruption through coronavirus. The government's been extremely generous in paying over £4 billion to keep Transport for London going. I appreciate that this is a dispute between TfL, the workers there, and the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, so I don't have a direct role in it, but I just appeal for them to get around a table and get these services running. This is the last thing that Londoners need, and I urge them to think again.
A couple of last stories. Where are you on e-scooters, Secretary of State? As it is announced, 131 pedestrians have been injured by those vehicles or modes of transport in the country over the last 12 months. I understood once you were a bit of a fan. Is that correct?
I don't think I've ever particularly commented one way or the other. They are a reality. There are, I think, 31 trials taking place around the country, and we're collecting data from that. I think what we're seeing is that in those trials where they're properly run, you have maximum speed, you've got a whole range of safety measures, you've got insurance. Those are by and large running very safely. There've been no serious incidents, no deaths, for example. What does concern me are the sales of scooters which are not allowed to be privately purchased and ridden on our roads or our pavements, but in some cases are. And we will look to legislate to ensure that there is more control over that side of things.
What will that legislation include? How will you do that, Secretary of State?
Well, we're looking at this right now with something like a transport bill, and for example, the same sort of regulatory regime that exists in the trials where you can hire e-scooters. That's things like consideration over whether you need to wear a helmet, the maximum speeds they can go at, the quality of build, whether they have indicators, the size of their wheels, whether they can be individually identified, whether they have registration. All of those things are very, very important. And, I think e-scooters are a reality where they're used properly and responsibly and within a trial. They tend to work quite well, and they take quite a lot of journeys off the road and are therefore good. Where we have problems, I think, are through the private sales where people wrongly are using them on the road or pavements, which isn't actually legal, but I can see that we may need to take more measures here.
Just staying with two wheels, are you okay now? I read that you had a tumble from your bicycle.
I did have a tumble. I had a cut lip and had a small operation and cut my chin. It's all recovering.
Well, I'm looking at you now. I can't see any scar tissue. Oh, did you lose half a tooth or something?
Yeah, a couple of teeth as well. They've been rebuilt as well. So it's coming back together, Nick, gradually. Nothing life-changing in that. And I'll tell you what, I'll be straight back on my bike.
Okay.
Because,
well, the next time we meet, I'll give you an apple, and I'll see if you're brave enough to bite into it, Secretary of State. How good your dent... Because I've got veneers as well, and I'm always very nervous around an apple.
I see. Well, I haven't experimented.
Okay. Lastly, time of year that nativity plays. Children put on nativity plays in our primary schools. There are concerns, say, some unions, it's a ridiculous idea to get all the children and the mums and dads in to watch a nativity play. Can the children have a nativity play, in your view, Secretary of State? Let
the nativity plays play on, is my view. We did not go through 2, now 3 rounds of vaccination and everything else to have to live out last Christmas again, where we weren't able to get together as we should have done in the numbers that we should have done with our friends and families. So, of course, steps will be taken, and no doubt, to make them as safe as possible. Ventilation and the rest of it, but yes, people should be able to get together.
Well, it all takes place in a stable, so that should be all right. Careful around the toast and the crusty rolls. Thanks for your time. Grant Shapps, appearing here on LBC 2 minutes after 8 News, is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8